I'm going to go ahead and close out debate on Council Bill 119825.
President
And we're
Gonzalez,
going to now consider
you misrepresented my point, so I need to respond very quickly.
Council Member Sawant, no. I'm
You
closing out
misrepresented
debate.
completely.
Council Member Sawant.
No,
Councilmember Sawant.
Give me a minute and I will be
No,
done.
I will
you
not.
misrepresented me completely. You said
Councilmember
that,
Sawant, I have closed out debate. I'm going to call for a point of order. I specifically called for comments by all council members prior to my making comments, and I am closing out debate on this.
Yes, but you completely misrepresented me, so I have to
I am
respond.
not misrepresenting anything. I'm not going to debate with you. I'm not going to argue with you. This is beneath all of us. Let's move on. So I am calling up the reconsideration of passage.
You said that just talking to the mayor is a violation.
825. The City Council will now vote to reconsider passage of Council Bill 119825 and to either override or sustain the mayoral veto. During roll call, council members will either vote aye to pass the bill and override the mayor's veto, or vote no to not pass the bill and sustain the veto. If the vote on the motion is tied or less than a 2/3, that's 6 votes, the bill fails and the veto is sustained. If the vote on the motion receives exactly 6 votes in favor, the bill passes. The veto is overridden, but the provisions within the bill do not go into effect. If the vote receives 7 or more votes in favor, the bill passes. The veto is overridden, and all provisions within the bill go into effect. Are there any questions on the procedures related to this vote?
Just to confirm, Madam President, then it's yes to override, no to sustain, correct?
Correct.
Great.
Yes, a vote to pass the bill and override is a yes. A no is a vote to sustain the veto. Okay. Hearing no further questions on the procedures related to the vote, as a reminder, council members will either vote aye or yes to pass the bill and override the mayor's veto, or vote no to not pass the bill and sustain the veto. Will the clerk please call the roll on the passage of Council Bill 119825 and consideration of the mayoral veto?
Lewis,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Mosqueda,
Yes.
Peterson,
No.
Sawant,
Yes.
Strauss,
Yes.
Herbold,
Yes.
Juarez,
No.
Council President Gonzalez.
Yes.
7 in favor, 2 opposed.
The motion carries. The mayor's veto is overridden, and the chair will sign the bill certifying passage of Council Bill 119825. Will the clerk please affix my signature to the bill? The chair recognizes that all provisions within this bill are in effect, and the council will not be considering item 4 on the agenda, which is Council Bill 119900. Item 2, reconsideration of Council Bill 119862. Will the clerk please read item 2 into the record?
Council Bill 119862, amending ordinance 126000, which adopted the 2020 budget, changing appropriations to the Legislative Department, appropriating funds from the Revenue Stabilization Fund, and ratifying and confirming certain prior acts, all by 3/4 vote of the City Council.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'm calling up the reconsideration of passage of Council Bill 119862 to consider passage of the bill and the mayor's veto. The reconsideration of Council Bill 119862 is now pending before the council. Are there any comments on Council Bill 119862? Okay, hearing no comments on Council Bill 119862, the City Council will now vote to reconsider passage of Council Bill 119862 and to either override or sustain the mayoral veto. During roll call, council members will either vote aye or yes to pass the bill and override the mayor's veto, or vote no to not pass the bill and sustain the veto. If the vote on the motion is tied or less than a 2/3, that's 6 votes, the bill fails and the veto is sustained. If the vote on the motion is exactly 6 votes in favor, the bill passes. The veto is overridden, but the provisions within the bill do not go into effect. If the vote receives 7 or more votes in favor, the bill passes, the veto is overridden, and all provisions within the bill go into effect. Are there any questions on the procedural matters related to this vote? Hearing none, as a reminder, council members will either vote aye or yes to pass the bill and override the mayor's veto, or vote no to not pass the bill and sustain the veto. Will the clerk please call the roll on the passage of Council Bill 119862 and consideration of the mayoral veto?
Lewis,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Mosqueda,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Sawant,
Yes.
Strauss,
Yes.
Herbold,
Yes.
Juarez.
Yes.
I'm sorry. That was a yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Council President Gonzalez.
Yes.
9 in favor, none opposed.
The motion carries, the mayor's veto is overridden, and the chair will sign the bill certifying passage of Council Bill 119862. Will the clerk please affix my signature to the bill? The chair recognizes that all provisions within this bill are in effect. Item 3, reconsideration of Council Bill 119863. Will the clerk please read item 3 into the record?
Agenda item 3, Council Bill 119863, authorizing the loan of funds from the Construction and Inspection Fund to the General Fund.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'm calling up the reconsideration of passage of Council Bill 119863 to consider passage of the bill and the mayor's veto. The reconsideration of Council Bill 119863 is now pending before the council. Are there any comments? Councilmember Herbold.
Thank you. I really appreciate Madam President's indulgence. I want to speak to the importance of this investment. This legislation would authorize $4 million to the Human Services Department for investments and efforts such as the Seattle Community Safety Initiative in responding to the immediate need for scaling up gun violence intervention and prevention, and to set up community safety hubs in target communities to facilitate culturally relevant and holistic community safety efforts. This is a partnership between 4 people of color-led organizations and programs, including Community Passageways, Urban Family, the Southeast Safety Network, the Boys and Girls Club, and the Alive and Free program of the YMCA. The additional $10 million would go to the Human Services Department for scaling up community-led organizations, including technical support and capacity building to increase public safety, so that HSD will contract with a nonprofit organization to serve as a central hub that will in turn award grant dollars to other nonprofit organizations. These investments would include growing the capacity of organizations that respond to 911 crisis calls, provide long-term support beyond crisis intervention to criminalized populations, and interrupt and prevent violence and harm. I ask your indulgence to speak to the importance of these investments and the use of these investments in recognition of the point that you, Council President Gonzalez, made earlier, that with the overriding of this veto, that we cannot compel the executive to spend these dollars, but I highlight the importance of these dollars and their use in a plea with the executive to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Herbold. Are there any other comments? Okay, hearing none, the City Council will now vote to reconsider passage of Council Bill 119863 and to either override or sustain the mayoral veto. During roll call, council members will either vote aye or yes to pass the bill and override the mayor's veto, or vote no to not pass the bill and sustain the veto. If the vote on the motion is tied or less than a 2/3, that's 6 votes, the bill fails and the veto is sustained. If the vote on the motion is 6 or more votes in favor, the bill passes, the veto is overridden, and all provisions within the bill go into effect. Are there any questions on the procedural aspects of the vote? Hearing none, as a reminder, council members will vote either aye or yes to pass the bill and override the mayor's veto, or vote no to not pass the bill and sustain the veto. Will the clerk please call the roll on the passage of Council Bill 119863 and consideration of the mayoral veto?
Lewis,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Mosqueda,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Sawant,
Yes.
Strauss,
Yes.
Herbold,
Yes.
Juarez,
Yes.
Council President Gonzalez.
Yes.
9 in favor, none opposed.
The motion carries, the mayor's veto is overridden, and the chair will sign the bill certifying passage of Council Bill 119863. Will the clerk please affix my signature to the bill? The chair recognizes that all provisions within the bill are in effect. Okay, colleagues, we do not need to consider agenda item 4, as it was only going to be necessary if the mayoral vetoes were sustained. So colleagues, this does conclude items of business on today's agenda. Our next regular city council meeting has been rescheduled to Tuesday, September 29th at 2:00 p.m. in observance of Yom Kippur, which is on Monday, September 28th. I do hope that all of you have a wonderful evening. I appreciate all of your attention, and we are adjourned. Good night.
Wow. Wow. All right, Mike. So what's your take, man?
It got a little spicy in there for a minute. They got to work better together within the council. Like the infighting between the members, it's not going to help. It's not going to help community. A lot of times when we see this play out and politicians just can't get along with each other for a common goal, it's usually the people that suffer. I think that Sawant's accusation of the Democratic members meeting behind the backs and, like that, we just can't have that within the council. But in the end, I am glad that no one waffled. I'm glad that the veto happened. I think that this is a small step in the right direction. I definitely think it's important to point out that we went through all of this, and for what % of a cut from the police budget, it's nowhere near 50. From what I've heard, it's under 5%. So it is a small step, but we can't celebrate the victory. We still got the victory.
Man, did you see this coming? I was talking to Kevin Schofield late last night, SCC Insight, and the conversation last night with me and Kevin was that he didn't. I mean, he studies the council every day, and he didn't know how it's going to go. And by the way, for people out there, so we're waiting on Nikita Oliver. Nikita's getting ready to join us, as well as Erica Barnett from C is for Crank, Nikita Oliver from King County Equity Now, Shaun Glaze from King County Equity Now. So we have actually a pretty good panel that's going to be joining us here shortly. We're just waiting for them to tap in. But what I was saying was that last night, talking to Kevin Schofield from SCC Insight, he said he didn't know, and he's somebody who studies this every day.
Right. Well, I didn't know either. And I feel like that's really what we've seen from council. It's really hard to predict what they're going to do, even when you see them saying things on Twitter or even saying things in public. When it really comes down to voting, it's often that we see a lot of waffling and a lot of backpedaling. So I'm definitely surprised to see all 3 go through, and 2 of them were unanimous.
Yeah. I'm wondering what's like, you see this stuff happening, it's coming at you in real time, but it's like, whoa. And so like, I'm wondering what's next. So I'm anxious for Nikita and for those guys to actually get on here so we can talk to them and see what King County Equity Now's position is. I mean, this is a big win. It's a big, it's for a small amount of money, but it's a big win. So right now we got Shaun Glaze from King County Equity Now. Let me add Shaun in. Hey, Shaun, how are you?
Trying to get my audio to work nicely.
Oh, okay. Well, me and Mike will continue our conversation here real quick.
I hear you now.
Good now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So and now we lost Shaun, but Shaun will be back. So, but the thing is like, this is a big victory for for these guys. And we've got Erica. So we got Erica Barnett. So we'll go to Erica. Erica from C is for Crank, for Polycola. We got Shaun back as well. But let's go to Erica. Erica had been live tweeting this whole thing. You've been covering this like nonstop, and I'm sure your thumbs are like very tired at this point from everything that you've been doing. Man, what is your feedback? What's your take on this?
Well, I was really surprised by the vote, I got to say. I talked to Council President Gonzalez this morning, and she told me she had absolutely no idea how it was going to go. And so I sort of took my cue from that, like, man, I have no idea what's going to happen. So I was frankly very, very surprised by the vote. So obviously there wasn't some like secret meeting between then and now. So I guess the council members kind of independently came to their own conclusions to vote to override this veto.
And what do you think were some of the reasonings that people came around here, I guess, last minute in supporting this veto override?
Well, I mean, I think if you take the council members at their word, and I think that that's a good place to start. I think that they felt that the things that they had decided to do in their own budget, in their version of the mayor's budget, were pretty modest. I think it was like a 1% or 1.4% cut to police, the elimination of the navigation team, or at least signaling that they want to do that. And I think they just decided, look, like this is not a huge thing that we've been asking for. And we've told people, we've told Black and brown communities, we've told low-income people, we've told people in our community who are targeted by police and have been demanding real significant change that we're going to make significant change. So I think, just reading their minds a little bit, I think that they may have realized that voting to essentially capitulate on the mayor's budget and uphold her budget with some small changes wasn't what the community wanted, and that, for a strictly political point of view, they're going to get blasted for that. But, to hear them talk today, I mean, there were some pretty heartfelt speeches about, we heard the community and we heard this is important. So, I think starting at taking council members at their word is a good place to just kind of start the conversation, and then you can get into kind of what are the political motivations.
All right. So we've got Nikita Oliver here. What's up, Nikita? How are you?
What's good, Omari? Thank you for having me.
Good to see you. And we've been reconnected with Shaun Glaze from King County Equity Now, and Nikita with King County Equity Now and DCRIM. So Nikita, I mean, we talked just the other day on the 16th, and we talked about, like, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I came from a position, like, my question was, is this defund dead? Is it, what's going to happen? It looks like it's lost steam at city council. That was really the vibe that me and a lot of other journalists were getting, was that, we weren't going to get to this point. So, I mean, I have to be honest that I'm a bit surprised. Tell me, what are your thoughts right now?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to say congratulations to all of the community organizers. Everyday March, morning and evening march, and Decriminalize Seattle, King County Equity Now. And honestly, the thousands of people who dedicated so much time and energy the last 115 plus days to being in the streets, and making sure that like the greater community has been included in upholding these demands. I also want to acknowledge at the same time, while celebrating this override feels like an immense victory just because we've had to work so hard. I want to acknowledge that we've had to work so hard for a 1% refund and a $17 million investment in community. And I just hope that as we approach the 2021 budget, that our labor is not seen in vain, and it's understood that we had to work incredibly hard to make this win possible.
Why is it, Nikita, if you can tell us? I mean, it seems like some of these council members, they came to this decision last minute, at least to us, it seems like. I mean, do you think that some of this pressure, we listen to the calls, although the calls a lot of times are weighted, but we listen to a lot of the calls. We saw a ramp in emails and in messaging, social media. Do you feel that like social media has impacted, or this last minute push impacted some people's votes here?
Absolutely. I believe the mobilization of community, making it very clear what residents in our city are expecting of our council, and in particular, expecting of our legislative branch. It is a part of their power to override the mayor's veto. I mean, that is a part of the checks and balances. And they stated very clearly in June, 7 of 9 of them, that they were riding with the Black Lives Matter movement. And so I think the public pressure calling them to hold to their word certainly was an immense part of that. Everything from social media to nightly and daily morning mobilization in the streets to phone calls and emails was a major push. And to be quite frank, council members like Andrew Lewis, and he even said in his vote today that he didn't agree with certain things. We were unsure where he was going to land. And there was just an immense amount of organizing to chase down those votes to ensure that we were able to get this meager win.
Right. And so let me go back up to you, Erica, and then we'll go over to Shaun. The same kind of question to you. Do you think that the last minute push, because there's also a push from the other side? I mean, according to SPOG, 180,000 signatures over there, a lot of pressure, social campaigns. We saw commercials and everything else. And that was just SPOG. There was lots of other organizations from the other side of this issue that were putting pressure on city council members. What do you think swung their, some of these guys' votes here in the last, literally the final hour?
Yeah, I think it was an accumulation of activism, frankly. I mean, I did, as kind of a fan of direct action, I did note when I was listening to the public comment, and I wasn't tweeting, but I was listening, that a lot of the people who spoke were saying, we're outside your house right now, and we're demanding action. And I think that it wasn't so much a last minute push as the fact that this has been going on and on and on. I mean, I think this is the longest that I have certainly seen an activist movement be completely engaged and on the ground every single day ever in the city. And I think that the power of that, I mean, is undeniable. So, I do think that this vote, and I mean, even though, as Nikita said, these are modest changes, and it's not the full package of what people want by any means, but even just the fact that they voted this way instead of sort of saying, well, we can't do anything about it, which is what they sounded like they were leaning towards, last week. I think that's a credit to the activism that's been happening on the ground for months now.
All right, and Shaun, tell us, so what does all this mean to the average person? They hear that some of this defund stuff's gone through. Some people say 1%, some people say 2%. There's money out there, $14 million, $4 million. Why don't you explain it exactly now, what has occurred in dollars and cents so people understand?
Sure. I mean, I think one thing that's really important for people to recognize is that it is now up to the mayor to release those funds. So City Council has spoken very clearly and articulated that this is what needs to happen. This money needs to go out to community. It needs to happen now in 2020. And it's up to the mayor to actually move and act to get those funds into community hands. And so if that money doesn't go into community hands, it is because our mayor has chosen not to act swiftly enough to get them there. That said, we're looking at $4 million to go towards gun violence disruption and prevention, which is huge. That is lives on the line will be saved because of this important investment. It's $10 million for scaling up community organizations to be able to respond and be able to scale up and really effectively work to do the work they're already doing, but at a more robust level to prevent violence, to disrupt violence, and also to create safer communities, more community health. And then $3 million for community research process that will look at what creates true community safety, true community health, and the conditions for us to thrive, as well as outlining a roadmap for a participatory budgeting process for the next 2 years. So it's very exciting, but again, it's going to be up to the mayor to actually act and release those funds immediately so that we can get going.
I think you're muted, Omari.
Oh.
So even though the city council's made these funds available, the mayor, it's really up to her if she actually spends the funds. Erica, up to you. What do you see the mayor doing here?
Well, I can't imagine that the mayor is going to be super eager to actually implement any of this stuff. And that's kind of like where the rubber hits the road. I mean, you know, when the council was talking about this compromise package that they had agreed to consider if the veto override didn't hold up, it was a lot of talk about, well, you know, the fact is that we can't force the mayor to spend any money. And one thing that's been really unique about this mayor is that she, I mean, more than other mayors, even going back to Greg Nichols, she's really willing to use the power of the mayor like to the fullest extent. And I think we're discovering, at least I'm discovering, maybe I was naive before, but like how powerful the mayor actually is in terms of what she can do. She can say, she can ignore budget provisos. There's a lot of stuff that's tied up in budget provisos. You know, the cuts to police are all through, you know, saying that this money can't be spent. But if the mayor just doesn't spend it, or if the mayor doesn't do what they want, rather, they're going to have to release that money because people have to get paid. And it's kind of the same thing with the navigation team. Durkin has said she wants to continue the navigation team. She said privately that she wants to continue the navigation team through 2021. And so, you know, I think that the political pressure is going to have to shift to some extent to the mayor because she has not shown any sign of budging on any major issues. Now she's going to unveil her 2021 budget on Tuesday. So we'll see. I mean, she says that there's some concessions in there, and Andrew Lewis said today that there's some movement on the navigation team. But I would be skeptical until we actually have a chance to see what those are.
All right, Nikita, what do you see the mayor doing? I mean, you've been on this for a long time. Do you think that she's going to release these funds? Erica said that it might take pressure now on the mayor. I mean, and this movement, as you refer to it as, has been putting pressure on the city council now for months. Does pressure now move to Mayor Durkin?
You know, I think at this point, we're going to see ourselves having two sustained fights. I absolutely believe we're going to have to pressure the mayor to free the funds. So hashtag free the funds. And that's going to be work that we're going to have to put in. That being said, as she's up for re-election in 2021, there's a level at which I think that's political suicide to withhold funds that are intended to scale up community responses and to address, needs around violence interruption in the South End, which has been a huge discussion over the entire summer. So I think if she were to make choices to do that, it would be at her own political cost. And at the same time, we'll be having to continue the keeping the pressure on the Seattle City Council for the 2021 budget because we're still owed somewhere between 48 and 49% of the defund that the movement has been demanding.
Right. And now, Shaun, the 2021 budget, that process, like Erica said, next week, the mayor is unveiling her budget on Tuesday. What is King County Equity now asking for, looking at in the 2021 budget?
I know that in the 2021 budget, one of the exciting things about it is that it's going to be a lot of what we're pushing for is for it to be a community informed process. That community led research process, the $3 million investment, is to be able to allow, everyday people to be able to inform budgetary priorities. It is one of the reasons why we fought so hard this summer to get it underway. And why we've been doing a lot of the work is starting a lot of the work unpaid while we wait for this process to move forward. And by that, I mean, it's pretty common for the executive to decide to sort of handpick which Black voices to listen to when talking about having our community in mind. And what we're pushing forward is for there to be a very robust community-led participatory process so that your everyday people who have lived experience, who have that expertise, that wisdom, that knowledge, that leadership about what could work are leading this and are driving the priorities for 2021 moving forward. So that's what we're most excited about, is to be able to really get rolling in a more robust way for that community-led research so that people, our elders, our young people, like the people who have been most impacted by this get to set the priorities, which is really exciting.
Erica, for every action, there's opposite and equal reaction. What are you expecting to happen for some of these vulnerable council members who voted for the override? I mean, some of them, I want to talk to Kevin Schofield. We talked the other day. Some of them have 3 years. He talked about Seattle has a long memory and things like that. But, you've got the mayor and you got 2 citywide council members that are up for election next year. What's this looking like for them, for the choices, these council members, the choices that they made today?
I mean, I actually think Seattle has a short memory. That's just, my observation over years covering the city council and the mayor. But I mean, I think
short memory.
What's that?
Yeah, I agree. He said short memory. I said wrong.
But I think that, there's always, like, whatever the issue has been in the past that sort of conservatives have rallied around, whether it's the Amazon tax, fighting the Amazon tax or whatever. I mean, response to, the anti-WTO protests, whatever it may be. Like, there's always this talk of a conservative backlash, and the conservative backlash is coming. And I think particularly with district elections right now, we have one of the more progressive city councils that I've ever seen. And I think this vote is reflective of that. And I hate to say that, like, it's never going to happen, because it totally could. But the last elections, I mean, we had 7 council members up. In most cases, the more progressive of the 2 people was elected. And I don't really see that changing because of this vote. If anything, I think this solidifies the support. And it also, will help diminish the opposition from the left, to some of these council members who voted, in the view of the left, the right way to on this, relatively minor vote. Now we'll see how they vote on the mayor's budget and how they change it. But I don't see this vote like galvanizing a nascent, silent majority or conservative movement in Seattle, because I think that the makeup of the council now kind of reflects where the city is.
Well, Nikita, if the makeup of the council reflects where the city is, then, is it true then that this really is a movement that's representative of the city? You've been saying movement for some months now, even before the protests began. You've referred to it as a movement. The city council's actions today, does this cement it that this is very much a movement that resonates across all districts of Seattle?
I mean, the movement was already cemented. We've been sustaining. The Black Lives Matter movement has been sustained since the murder of Trayvon Martin. And we've seen multiple uprisings in our city. And I think, like Erica said, I actually think the city council right now is a reflection of where our city's priorities are as how it looks from an electoral position. Reality is, though, that if it wasn't for the movement, these electeds would not have voted in the direction that they did. So, the movement is strong. I think that what will happen while this particular vote presents a very minor victory, it will actually further embolden people to remain engaged through the 2021 budget cycle. And that's actually what I think is most important about this moment, is that people are seeing the ways in which we can be effective as residents, that when we galvanize community, that when we organize, that when we have a shared message, vision, and goal, that we do have the power to make electeds do what is best for our community. And so that is actually really, for me, the significance of this moment. Regardless of what the electeds chose to do here, the truth of the matter is the strength of the movement has been revealed. You're muted again, Omari.
Thanks. You're also a production assistant. You see what I'm saying?
I got so many skills.
Production assistant. Shaun, we got a lot of new viewers in here today, which is great. And one thing we talked about, even right there, Nikki, there's a lot of people who are now engaged in the system. Believe it or not, hundreds of people have been on here, like watching council members talk back and forth, and people want to know what's going on. If you can tell everybody briefly just about the King County Equity Now Coalition, Shaun, so for people who are just now becoming aware of it.
Sure. King County Equity Now is a ecosystem of Black educators, healers, generational organizers, families, youth, elders, over 60 accountable Black-led community-based organizations here in the Seattle area. We're implementing a new normal rooted in equity. And it's really across like all of the meaningful metrics. So that's like mortality rates, wealth, education, land ownership, et cetera, especially research. So for those of you who are newer, it is basically a Black-led coalition of Black-led community-based organizations here in the region.
All right. And now, Erica, what do you think the mayor's get back's going to be? I'm sure they're putting a statement together now. She's getting ready to talk to, the public. And you got to remember, they're getting ready to hammer her probably from DC. You know what I'm saying? So she's getting ready to get it on a few different fronts here. What do you see the mayor saying?
Yeah, I've been checking my inbox to see if she has a statement out yet. I mean, my expectation is, she'll denounce it. She'll say that it's meaningless because we only have 3 months left in the year. And then I do think the clock will start again on Tuesday when she releases her budget. But I think, until then, she'll just kind of dismiss this as an irrelevant vote that she's not obliged to act on. She said that, for example, a lot of the police cuts, the out of order layoffs are not going to happen this year, even though the council has suggested that they should, because there's only 3 months left or less than 3 months. And it takes, about 3 months at a minimum to negotiate those things with the police union. I think that's legitimate, and the council raised that issue as well. So, I think she's going to say that it's a whole lot of nothing. I could be wrong. I mean, we may be coming out with an even fierier statement like as we speak, but I don't see it in my inbox yet.
All right. Last question is yours, Nikita. Oliver, man, where do you see, what's the long-term, the big long-term picture of this movement, as you referred to? You guys got clearly a victory here today and a powerful statement, to be honest with you, and surprising. I'm still surprised. and surprising today. What's the big long picture for what you guys are doing here today?
Yeah, I mean, the last few months have obviously been incredibly hard and immense amount of labor, but the real work is what we're about to enter into. The $10 million to scale up community-based responses is key. Getting to the place where we have all of those responses ready to go to take over once 911 is fully civilianized, ensuring that we actually are getting the $4 million out to the people doing the violence interruption work, and that they have the capacity and tools and opportunities to continue innovating. Shaun's team leading the participatory research that leads into this participatory budgeting process is going to be key to really informing what are the divestment areas from the Seattle Police Department budget, and what does real investment look like that actually changes the material conditions and lived experiences of Black, Indigenous people of color in our city. And then from there, the truth of the matter is we know that defunding the police is just the beginning. There is a whole criminal punishment system, judges, courts, probation, jails, and mass incarceration. There's a whole system of things that are afflicting Black and Indigenous people of color communities that are a part of why we're caught in this cycle. So, for many of us who are abolitionists, we know that this defund movement when it comes to SPD is really one part of a much broader movement that is addressing the disproportionate impact of the criminal punishment system upon Black communities, and doing that very key work of investing in the communities in such a strategic way that is led by those most affected communities, that we actually change the material conditions that people are living in.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Erica Barnett, Shaun Glaze, Mike Davis, who I guess he dropped off, but Mike was with me, by the way, through all the speeches. It was a marathon. Mike, and of course, Nikita Oliver, want to thank all you guys for taking time tonight. You know, we tried something new tonight, and it looks like it worked. And this is great because, you know, this is a platform we're bringing community together to report back to the community in real time. So I appreciate all you guys logging in, and I'm sure we'll all be talking again soon on this subject matter because it's not going anywhere.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.